Hey there, it's David H. Lawrence the 17th, and I'm really excited. Today we're going to talk about accents and dialects. One of the things that I get very frequently from new students, from people who are reaching out to me on the socials about voiceover, audiobooks in particular, but voiceover in general, is questions about accents, questions about dialects, questions about accuracy requirements. I'm not good at it. I'm good at these, but not those. Okay, cool. Because today we have a guest who is going to blow your mind and make you happy and let you off the hook and a whole bunch of other things. He's got a lot of things on his plate that he has to get done in the next hour if he's going to be given his certificate of participation for the social networks. When you guest on a live stream. Jim Johnson, everybody. Jim is my accent coach. Jim and my buddy Dan O'Day do a course called the Accents Class, and we're going to be talking about that today because currently you can register for the Accents Class at a lower rate than one might expect if you act fast. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Your internet connection is beautiful.
Oh, why, thank you. It's new. It's
You're
new. Does it
welcome.
look good on me?
Yeah, it looks really good. That and your haircut and your beard trim. Finally, if I recall correctly, was it a few weeks ago you were reporting live from some Eastern European bloc country? I don't know where you were, but it looked very, very, medieval.
Yeah. Well, I teach each summer in Prague.
That's what it was.
Yep. So my wife and I go and we teach each summer in Prague, and so I was there for a big chunk of the summer, and then came back, and I've been on a dialect recording tour just recently. Doing some recordings?
Did you record any accents or English speaking accented English in Czechoslovakia?
I think I only got a couple on this trip. It was so focused on other work that I didn't have a lot of time for that. Yeah. But I then, when I got back from there to the States, one of the things I do is travel around in my camper van and do dialect recordings. So I was up in the Dakotas mainly. Around North and South Dakota.
North and South Dakota.
Getting recordings around there. And yeah, it was really nice.
So when you hear, I'm not talking to you in particular right now, Jim, I'm talking to the person watching. When your financial planner says to you things like, well, if you can figure out how to deduct this, then sure, you can go take your trip to North Dakota. Jim not only goes around the country, the world, recording people speaking in English with their native accents and uses that and has built this library of recordings of those things. But he makes those available to his students. It's part of the course. It's a library that is constantly being added to. When I first took the course, it was in 1947, and he's been adding to the library ever since, including how accents change over time. There's so much stuff to talk about. So the accents class is starting next week, and the registration is open right now. And we're going to put a little link up here just so you know that if you act before tomorrow night, Tuesday night at 9:00 Pacific, Dan O'Day has been hornswoggled into taking $300 out of his pocket and giving it to you as a bit of a break on the price of the class. So just know that that's the case. Go to voheroes.com/accents, mention my name, David H. Lawrence 17th, when you sign up, and you'll be able to enjoy a really hyper version of what we're going to talk about this hour. But that's the link, voheroes.com/accents. Now, Jim is a classically trained actor. Jim is a retired college professor. Before he retired, he had tenure. So he was one of the big wigs. It was University of Houston, right?
Yeah.
So I have friends in Houston, and one of them just flew in for the Texans game this past month, and we won, no, yeah. But you're not a big sports fan, right? I wore my Nui Nui shirt, and you're like, "What's that?"
I actually, one of the things that I love to do when I'm traveling is go to baseball games. So if
Oh,
it's at all in the summer, I'm not even that huge of a baseball fan, but I love going to games. I love going to major league and minor league parks. So I've been to a lot of them around the country. I
great.
absolutely love doing that. I kind of hate that they've sped up baseball because I love the slow motion of it. I don't
Yeah,
want to watch it on TV, but I want to see it in person, and I want it
yeah.
to take as long as possible.
Well, it's a different experience in person than it is on television. They
Yeah.
sped up
Yeah.
baseball for television. So, have you seen the Savannah Bananas?
No, I have not. I know. I
Do you
know.
know about them?
Oh, I know about them a great deal.
They
Yes.
could have called themselves the Bill Vecks. If you know anything about Cleveland Indians baseball or how Bill Veck was
Wow.
a showman, and we're going to talk about accents and dialects at some point, I promise. But Nui Nui, of course, was from the Olympics when Steph Curry went Nui Nui as we beat the French in the finals. Um, when you were teaching, you also taught Shakespeare. You also performed Shakespeare. So, there are people who are sort of clinical experts at accents and dialects, people who teach others how to imitate very, very well in some cases. You take a bit of a different approach. First of all, you use IPA and you use placement. And when you teach, I always felt like I wasn't just getting an example that I could, use my powers of impression to
Mm.
regurgitate, but I actually knew where to place the words in my mouth, where to place my tongue. Like I got into the feeling of being part of the culture. Why do that rather than simply teach an actor how to mimic an accent or a dialect?
Well, I will say mimicry, there's an element of it that's incredibly helpful. But if you're struggling with something and you can't quite figure it out, you've really got to have a method for figuring out how do I overcome this thing that doesn't come to me through mimicry, through what I've done before. And so that's why I find it really important for us to talk about concepts like placement and intonation, the musicality of it, and to have methods for working on that. So, as you remember, we do a ton of physicalization in my work because I find that when people physicalize, it makes a huge difference for them actually getting it vocally, getting it in their brain and in their mouth.
Yeah,
Yeah, by doing physical actions that go along with it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I also, for me anyway, it helped me when new words that I hadn't expected showed up in front of me and I had to deliver them with whatever accent or dialect I was trying to affect. I think one of the limitations that I've seen others when they teach this sort of thing is you can get the work done for the words that maybe you've brought to the
Mm.
coaching session, but then during the rest of the book, it's like, how do I do this other stuff? So that physicality was really helpful, and it's a real core part of how Jim teaches in the accents class. Um, when I last saw you in person, you were here in Southern California, and you were recording a particular dialect that is pretty much limited to this area and maybe a couple of the states around it, but it's that Southwest Hispanic
Mm.
Spanglish accent with up talking and a little bit of fry and a little bit of sort of syllabic structure that's kind of different from speaking in normal English. How do you see those things? Do you recognize those things as they pop up on television or on the internet, or how do those things come to your attention?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the challenges too, boy, does it annoy me actually when people go, "Where am I from? Where am I from?" And it's because the reason that it drives me a little crazy is usually they've only said about 5 words before they go, "Oh, tell me where I'm from." And the deal is that most of us have kind of this moderate middle of the road, what's called a mesolect. as opposed to a basilect. So a basilect is a really, really strong version. Yes, take your notes. Conceptually, it's an important idea because a basilect is a really, really strong version of an accent. It's like that strong localized sound. And most people don't have that, but it's really important to work based off of that because you get a sense of like, what is it when it's cranked up to 11, you know? And so that you get a sense of what those elements are. And then most people are speaking more mesolectically. And so they're a little bit more in this kind of land in between that and, like, if it's in the US, something that I like to call generican, you know, this generic American sound.
Okay. Yeah. The basilect thing reminds me of when I'm watching the news at night here in Southern California, and there's either a Hispanic or an Asian street reporter who, during the course of the story, is speaking with a Masalek accent, but when they say words that are native to their language, all of a sudden, you know, it becomes not Los Angeles, but Los Angeles, you know, and you get this overdriven, which is, I think you might agree, is a mistake that some actors make when they're performing with an accent or a dialect. They push it so much to show they did their homework.
Yeah.
They had a coach. They push it so much that it kind of takes the audience out of what they're doing. When you coach people, do you talk to them about the balance of the story versus the artwork?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you know, some of it I'll say is the balance of the story, but some of it is also because somebody can do a really strong version and it works, but it's really got to get integrated into them. And that's always an issue, no matter how heavy or light an accent is. I do like to start with people going on that really, really strong end, because the strong version of the accent is where we're going to learn all these different elements. So we make sure that we don't violate those and tell people that we're not from there or that we are from somewhere else. So we want to learn those strong versions. But then the important thing is to get it integrated. And a lot of times the text is what's going to indicate that. Like a lot of times, you know, like one of the things that I do too is I do a lot of recording of people's lines for them in dialect as well. And so especially if it's an English as a foreign language or as a second language, you look at how fluent somebody is in their speech and go, yeah, so the accent should probably only be to this degree. And that's what seems right for doing this accent with this text. So the text has to guide it as well. And that's part of why I appreciate that I've done work as an actor as well, because then I'm really coming from like organic ownership is what it's got to turn into. You're sort of taking these individuals' accents and you've got to turn them from this more generalized concept of what various people who speak with this accent are, and then turn it back into your own individual idiolect, the way that, I know I'm throwing around fancy words at you, but
it's okay. It's okay.
An individual's
I have a pen that's working. And so, and I imagine basilect, mesolect, idiolect more specific.
Idiolect is like an individual's way of speaking.
Yeah.
And then another word I haven't thrown at you is acrolect, which is like generican would be an acrolect. It's that mode of speaking that oftentimes is thought of as kind of the fancy mode of speaking. Old school, it would have been that RP, you know, standard British, which nowadays is probably more like estuary, things along this line. That is the no accent in England.
Yeah.
Even though it is an accent and everyone has an accent, but yeah.
Yeah, and here in the United States in the 20s, 30s, 40s, maybe the Mid-Atlantic accent, you know, was considered sort of posh, you know.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right, sir.
Wherever will we be? You know, I wonder if it's a joy for you to watch accents morph over time, to see let's just call it a celebrity or an influencer's idiolect. I'm sure the Kardashians had a lot to do with the popularity of vocal fry, moving into the mainstream and moving into the point where, you know, there's skits about vocal fry now, and there's skits about up talking and skits like I'm from 1940, sketch comedy about it. When when you are working with an actor, um, I imagine that there are questions that you ask about who their character is in the story if you're not familiar with the script, what level of engagement they're working in. If they're a waiter coming into the room for one or two lines, but the waiter's a French waiter and he's snooty and maybe has some comedy involved, that might change how you do things to be more broad in your accent because it feeds the comedy. And maybe if it isn't, maybe if it's just like somebody bringing the bags in and then leaving, okay, just very, very calmly. I mean, you take a look at the way the words do the heavy lifting or not within the
Mhm.
story is, I
Yeah,
think,
yeah,
what
yeah.
you're saying.
Yeah, style's definitely a part of it. Style's a part of it. Time period is a part of it, and place, of course, and then people's class, like education, those kinds of things, oftentimes have an effect on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely, but definitely being able to read the style of a piece, how broad or how sort of grounded and realistic are they going with a piece? What's the time period for it, along with that style? Definitely has a huge impact on what you got to go for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now Jim has thrown out at least 400 or so phrases, not the least of which is acrolect, idiolect, mesolect, and basilect. And I don't want you to be fearful that when you work with Jim, that's the kind of word salad that you're going to be showered with. You certainly will be given resources that help you understand how this is all constructed. But the best part of taking the accents class is working with Jim live during the sessions. And you do that in the class. Can you talk about that? If people you give people samples, do they bring stuff themselves? How does that work?
Yeah. Well, so what I actually do is I write pieces for us to work on in the class, so pieces of text. And what I try to do in those pieces is build in certain building blocks that we're working on. So there are sounds like we start with RP, old school standard British RP, that very classic sort of RP sound along that line, lords and ladies sort of things, but trying to be a bit more grounded and realistic of another time before. And there are elements to pick up on through that accent that I want to reinforce with the words that we're utilizing in the monologue. And so we'll apply that in that accent. And then we actually move on to Cockney. So we go with a very strong working class basilect, right? That sort of Cockney, go very, very strong with it so people get a sense of it. And then, we want to start like way over the top a bit. And then we want to play it so it actually becomes more realistic. But we've got to make sure that all those elements are in there. And so the monologues, the pieces we're working on, are really trying to utilize certain principles that start to transfer from one accent to another as we're reinforcing concepts that are about things like placement and intonation, but they're also about the specific sounds, like the scary phonetics that are up there behind me, that we don't spend as much time talking about the phonetics as using them just as like a framing tool. Like, it's important that I know them and I can explain certain concepts from them to people, and that they get the concepts around them, but that they don't actually have to know and understand the IPA fully to get it. But there's little principles written into it that are incredibly helpful to people.
Yeah. I want to be clear to people who are beer drinkers that we're not talking about that IPA. We're talking about the International Phonetic Alphabet. And I have been subjected to accent and dialect training in the past where the academic approach was the approach, and the side cutaway of somebody's head and the IPA and where things were pretty much all that was given to me. And yeah, there was a little bit of practice, but I think that that's kind of reversed with you. In fact, I know it is. And in addition to that, the library of accents and dialects that you've gone around the world and recorded are part of the course. They're given to you with the course, and not just the library as it stands today, but you also include any future updates to that. So I've been your client and a student for almost a decade now. And in that decade, I've seen things change. I've seen new things kind of pop to the front of your brain when you think about a certain area of the country and how they sound, maybe based on current events or recent, big events. I know you were recently on the Today Show. Was that right? Talking about Southern accents?
Yeah, yeah. I was on, it was very interesting. Did like an hour and a half interview, big walk and talk and all this different stuff, which turned into about 7 seconds, maybe.
Well, that's what happens in radio and television, as you know. But we do take the best parts. We take the best parts. And the good news here is that, Jim really delivers and understands the acting community. So if you're a voice talent, if you're an on-camera actor, if you're both, certainly if you're an audiobook narrator and you have been avoiding doing books that list anything in the description for the audition of needing to have an accent, this is the class for you. It really is. Go to voheroes.com/accents. Let me put that back up on the screen. If you act before Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Pacific, it's going to be $300 less than it will be if you wait until after that. So do go there, mention my name, mention that I sent you, please, if you would, because Dan currently is outside yelling at somebody using a leaf blower as opposed to being here with us. So he can't actually know that you're going because of this. So just know that that's the case. voheroes.com/accents. And to that end, talking about sort of the fear of or the avoidance of doing this work, I tell my students, and I have told them for a long time, that if you feel like you can't do it, it's okay. You don't have to be super, super spectacularly accurate in your accent or dialect, because despite the fact that there are a bunch of know-it-alls on the internet that will come into your reviews and your ratings area on the title that you've created or in the comments of the bit that you've done or the episode you've been in or the film you've been in, and tell you just how bad your Minnesota accent is, because I grew up in Twin Cities, I was there in St. Paul. They'll tell you, even if you grew up there as well. I had somebody tell me that my Cleveland accent was lacking. And I'm like, really? Is that the case? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, what are you going to do? On the other hand, there are, and this is what I wanted to ask you, there are accents that some people avoid because they're fearful of being labeled as racist, classist, misogynist, sexist, ageist. I did a book that there was a street preacher in, and I just went for it. And I was really happy with it. I was hoping I wouldn't get bad reviews. And in fact, I didn't. There was one lady who was African-American, left a review for me, and she said, "This guy's white. I didn't know this guy was white." And so that was a win for me. When someone is presented with that kind of fear, what kind of advice do you give them?
Well, I think whatever you do, you want to come at it with respect and appreciation for it. And even just coming at it from that mental space and doing like due diligence of serving that character in that moment and moving that story forward, serving the story, that's what's absolutely essential. Because, if the story's not moving forward with it, if the character isn't serving that, then we got a problem. And so you being able to do it to a degree that lends validity to it. So an accent full out, or if it's about doing some of the essential elements of the accent so that people get the spirit of the character, that's sometimes appropriate if you're looking at something like audiobooks, that having that sense of placement and intonation end up becoming the biggest key for tying that together. So though that's part of why we spend so much time focusing on those elements.
So it's not just the accuracy of the accent, the accuracy of the dialect, but also the level, the role itself. What is your job in the story? Is your job to just kind of be the hot dog vendor that hands somebody the hot dog and it moves them down the path in their conversation? Or are you the hot dog vendor that hands them the hot dog and then pulls a gun out from underneath and shoots them? You know, it's like, what level are you working at? And I would imagine that that plays a role in even the amount of force that you give to the lines that you're delivering and the way you're delivering them in whatever accent or dialect you're being asked to use.
And also that like one of the things that sometimes comes up in coachings is going, okay, great, like you're doing the accent, but can you stop demonstrating the accent to me? Can you start to let that, and we start to work towards integration so that it's like, great, now you sound like a human while you're doing the accent. And it actually so much of the time you're better off doing a not as good version of the accent, but doing it with truth and connection, than you are doing absolutely accurate and it feels like it's disconnected. That's always problematic. Yeah. Or if you have all the sounds are right, but the placement, the overall feeling of it, of where it lives in the mouth is not on, it's going to mess up the sounds and it's going to make you sound not grounded and honest and connected. Yeah.
There are a couple of extra levels that I've noticed recently. Number one is made up languages. Scott Brick, who is arguably one of the most famous, one of the most beloved audiobook narrators, recently posted in an audiobook narrators group, hey, anybody here know Klingon? You know, and it's like, you know, and then you're going to have some people who are going to be like, you know, like Sheldon Cooper, you know, they're going to be, you know, checking your Klingon. But you had an experience with that. You actually helped work on a product out of the Game of Thrones world.
Yeah. Valyrian and Dothraki. Right. Yeah. Dothraki. Of working with, so it was for the launch, the big launch fest for the final season of Game of Thrones. When they went to South by, they were doing a live interactive thing. And so I actually prepped all of the 40 plus actors with all of their different accents that they needed, whether they were from the north or from the south, or if they were, if they needed to actually speak. We had people who were speaking in Valyrian and in Dothraki and needed to get those phrases just right, because I was like, you know, you're doing this for that one person who's going to come in and speak it. I actually worked with a student this summer, and she speaks Klingon. So she knows Klingon, and another student knew a bunch of phrases. This was a couple summers ago, but knew a couple of phrases in Valyrian. And so those are the people that you got to be prepped for when you're really digging into those things. Yeah.
So the other sort of second level thing that Jim is so good at and has likely encountered many times is the notion of someone speaking English in an accent different from your own, imitating your accent. And what I think about is John Cleese in A Fish Named Wanda, when he's making fun of Kevin Kline and saying, "Bye, cracky," and he's English and he's trying to do a bad American accent. This is like layers of, this is like a 7-layer tort of accents and dialects. How do you even start to unpack something like that?
It's just got to be character driven. You know, it's got to be character driven. And how good or how bad are they supposed to be with it? Are they supposed to transform completely? Are we supposed to buy that this is a French chef until we find out it's not a French chef? This chef is from Kansas. Or is it something where we're supposed to see through it because they just throw out a single phrase or something like that, where they're doing mockery? Yeah.
So just so you know, you watching this video, Jim's course, along with Dan O'Day, is called the Accents Class. And it's only given, every so often. It's starting next week. It's kicking off next week. The class includes live sessions. It includes homework. I don't know. I guess you could call it that. But the notion of doing the work outside the class and also having resources that are not only workable, listening to actual accent and dialect samples recorded by Jim around the world, but also being assembled into a library that allows you to, you get an audition, you notice, oh, I need to do a Georgian accent, and I mean state of Georgia, United States, as opposed to a Carolina accent. Jim gets pretty specific when it comes to areas. People say, they make two kinds of, sort of generalizations that I kind of cringe at. They say British accent, and I go, which of the 300 British accents are you talking about? And then they also say Southern accent. And clearly there's a huge difference between a New Orleans accent, a Carolinas accent, a Panhandle of Florida accent, a Texas accent. And you've got somebody that you're staring at there, the one with the beard, that has that kind of very fine, acute experience with the differences in those accents. So if truly you want to be as accurate as possible, this class is the way to go. And the other end of that spectrum is if you are frightened about doing accents and dialects because you feel like you've never had the facility to do it, Jim is one of these people who just makes you feel at ease. I mean, look at him. Look at that baby face. He's just, yeah, that or biker face. I don't know which you would say.
Baby biker. I'm a
baby biker. Yeah, exactly. And now, of course, I have to go make a video on that site where you can make babies say things. All right, going to Sturgis. Okay, so the accents class is starting next week. If you want to be in the class, and you want to be in the class for $300 less than you would be in the class if you waited until after tomorrow night, Tuesday night at 9 p.m., don't go to voheroes.com/accents, pay the extra money. But if you want to save $300 and take it out of Dan's pocket, and who doesn't love taking money out of Dan's pocket, right? Go to voheroes.com/accents, and that's where you'll find the information. Please mention my name when you sign up. This is probably one of the best classes in any category of classes that I've been through, mostly because Jim actually is a professor. He actually doesn't just play a high-level teacher on television. He is a high-level teacher. He was a high-level teacher before he decided he was going to, play golf for the rest of his life in Czechoslovakia. But please consider this. If this is something that you want to do, if you want to add accents and dialects to all of the other tools that you have in your voiceover quiver, in your acting toolkit, this truly is the best course you can take. And it's also one of the least expensive courses you can take for what you get and the ongoing support that you get. Because here I am, again, almost a decade in working with Jim, and my library of accents keeps getting updated all the time. So it's an ongoing asset that keeps, spitting off dividends. It's really worth considering. When you are thinking about how the idea of using an accent has become much more important than it was. I mean, maybe it's audiobooks that did all that. I mean, they're much more specific about what they want in the breakdowns for audiobook auditions these days. But when I think back to, I don't know, 30s, 40s, 50s, a lot of German Nazi soldiers had English accents because the actors that were playing them weren't German or weren't just, told by the director, you should use a German accent. How did accents become so important and specific? Was it the internet? What happened?
I think internet is a big part of that. It's exposure. I think it's partially internet. I think it's also partially that people move around a lot more than what they used to. It's all of it, I think, is all about exposure. The fact that now we've got exposure through ourselves moving around or other people moving around, or through the internet or through access to so many different sources of entertainment that we're living in a much smaller world than what we used to. Our neighbors are a lot, our neighbors are a lot further away from us because we have relationships with these people over huge distances now that we didn't used to. So I think that's definitely had an impact on it. It's also happily is that there's more respect for the fact that those different people from different places, you actually want to try to give some accuracy to that and not just go, that's Boston-ish, but actually get much more so that somebody from Boston would go, yeah, I'd buy that. I'd buy that from Boston.
Yeah. And I also, that kind of opens up the other end of this spectrum, and that is people who have very specific and very, very harsh to them accents, because when they go after a role that doesn't include that accent, they feel like, oh, that's going to hold me back. How do you speak to people like that in terms of the pride that you can elicit from someone's native accent?
Well, the thing that I oftentimes hear when I'm going around doing recordings is somebody might say something like, oh, I've got a terrible accent. And I'm like, no, you don't. I love it. There's a reason that I'm here and that I do this, because I love them. And when people are almost always saying, this is my least favorite accent, or this is the worst, or this is the best, I am always back at them with feedback that's like, no. There's not accents are not bad. I still remember I tried to keep it friendly, a conversation with a librarian in Utah who was talking about the way people say, if somebody comes in here and says, this weekend we went to the mountain. She said, where did you go? I don't know what you said. Oh, you didn't say the T in that word. And I actually said, well, they did say the T. It's a different kind of T. They did a T, but it's a nasal released T. It's a mountain. Yeah. And so I actually tried to sort of pretend that I was teaching her a little bit of something to try to help her to unplug the fact that it's like, no, you got all this bias that you're throwing at this person. Yeah. And it's unfortunate that exists. I love it when I find somebody who is like very high in their field, and maybe highly educated and something like that, and has an incredibly strong accent. I love that because it kind of kicks that stereotype. So often it's this stereotype of ignorance, and it kicks it in the teeth. And I love that. Yeah.
The Professor Guelzo is who I'm reminded of. Professor Guelzo has narrated some of the great courses, mostly on American history. And he has the thickest Western Pennsylvania accent. He's going down there and he's talking about this stuff, and it's just delicious. It really is.
Love it. I love it.
And he's so educated. I saw somebody who posted a clip of what he did. Oh, that's Professor Guelzo. He's I listened to several courses, that he taught. And how did you know that? Well, because he has gone up and downtown and he's going to go to Eaton Park and that, So, you can recognize people by that. I had a client who was very concerned about his Southie accent, his Southie Boston accent.
Yeah.
And I said, one of the things to remember is, yes, you can add other accents, and we're going to talk about accent reduction in just a second here, and I'll be pummeling it with a ball-peen hammer. You can talk about accent reduction, and that's what he came to me for. He goes, do you know anybody who can help me get rid of this? And I'm like, no, and I wouldn't suggest you do. What I would suggest you do is add other options to the things that you can perform with. When you think about Hugh Laurie, and how he created a fairly generic with a bit of a lisp, general American accent for house. So much so that my mom thought that he was faking a British accent when he was on the Tonight Show. She called me and she said, why is House sounding like he's from Britain?
That's beautiful.
Well, he is. But I said, listen, you should celebrate this, and when they need somebody who has a Southie accent, you're not going to have to work at all. You're just going to be able to do the lines, Hopefully they'll be written in the syntax that a Southie would use, right? and some of the slang that a Southie would use. And of course, now he's well known as one of the lead characters in one of the Call of Duty episodes, one of the Call of Duty games, as a battalion commander from South Boston. So,
Nice.
these things can happen. So let me talk a little bit about accent reduction. I want to remind you that the accent class is starting next week. If you want to be involved, this is your guy. This is your guy. That guy right there on the screen, not me, the other guy. Jim Johnson teaches the accents class along with Dan O'Day. And Jim will get you where you need to go. And if you want to save some cash, go to voheroes.com/accents, sign up before Tuesday night at 9. Dan will give you a great rebate on your thing. And Jim, by the way, is on board with that. He wants you to get in for whatever works best for you. Accent reduction. A lot of people grow up a little bit embarrassed, maybe, about where they're from. They want to shed that as quickly as possible. They want to move to California, get rid of that Midwestern North Coast accent. They want to get rid of that Southern accent. And yet, is that the right path to go to? Do you even approach doing accent reduction?
Well, yes, with a lot of conversation around it, because besides accent reduction I do believe that there actually is accent reduction, because there's a degree when sometimes someone's accent may make them too hard to understand. And that's usually when you're looking at English as a second language or a foreign language. But once in a while, somebody with certain elements. And then it's about, okay, let's learn about these elements of your accent. What's going on there? Here are those sounds there. And this is part of what they also just need to learn to be able to take on other accents, to go, oh, what have you got? Where are you coming from? What are all those different elements? As they learn about their own accent, it's interesting. People from a place are so often the worst ones for judging what that accent is. I just had a guy I was recording from Northeast Minneapolis, and he was talking about the Northeast accent there. And every time that he was trying to do it, he would actually kind of mess it up a little bit because he was overdoing it a little bit. When people try to demonstrate their own, or when I was in Boston, I was getting recordings of people, and I would often ask them, what do you think are some of the best and worst Boston accents you've ever heard in say, films or television? 2 people in a row said, Jeremy Renner in The Town, best Boston accent I've ever heard. And the next person said, Jeremy Renner in The Town, worst Boston accent I've ever heard. It's a great example of how people just don't get it. Or I was actually just working with an actress on her Dutch accent for a production, and she'd been working with a Dutch person and was actually getting really messed up because the Dutch person was apparently playing up their accent and was actually kind of messing up their accent, doing things, and also didn't get the context of the story, what their accent needed to be and what it needed to not be. So oftentimes, like, the people from those places are problematic. I think I've gotten way off topic here.
No, the accent reduction thing was what I'd asked about, and
yeah,
I think you kind of covered that to a degree. Do you offer the kind of, you said there was a lot of conversation around it when somebody comes to you and says, I know you help people learn accents, but can you help me get rid of mine?
Besides, it's most people. So 14 is this magic age that it's considered. Linguists in general see 14 as this magic age that if you move somewhere before you're 14, you will change to speak like a local in the new place. And that same thing goes with a new language. But if it's after 14, you probably won't. But one of the things that actors have to do is be really oftentimes it's easier to disguise an accent inside of another accent rather than trying to disguise it by making it not be there. It's really hard to not anything. So we want to learn about the elements of an accent and then be able to go, okay, so this element in this accent is this, and this is the same as what you use in this. So we want to look at the way that you speak actually as a superpower. This is something that you bring to the table that you want. And we also want flexibility. We want to be able to play around that allows us to make other choices as well.
Yeah, whenever you talk about, hiding an accent within an accent, and accents in general, as an actor would put them, I always think about the movie with Joe Pesci and Fred Gwynne, and I forget the name of the actress that played the car expert, but
Yes.
they even make fun of the accent Ute. They make
You,
fun of the accent. Fred Gwynne
yeah.
goes, "What's a Ute?" You know, and I know there's people yelling at their computers and their phones right now, telling me who the actress is. And she's one of my favorites too. She was in Spider-Man
She
as
even won the Academy Award for that
I
role.
know, I'm so embarrassed. And she's one of my favorites. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
But the
she's
point is,
amazing.
when it fits, it's amazing. And when you're a single actor playing a single role that has a particular accent involved, that's one level. But when you're one of my clients who is an audiobook narrator and they have multiple characters,
Mhm.
maybe with different languages because the story ranges worldwide or between regions in a country, United States, UK, um, and they have to switch back and forth between accents and no accents, or one accent and another accent. How do you approach that with an actor? How do you tell them technically how to switch between
Yeah.
those accents?
It becomes about embodiment. Like literally, I want them to change their physicality and realize the rhythm is going to be different. The whole feeling of it is going to be different. And so changing what they're doing physically in the booth can make a massive difference. I've also done a lot of work. I've done a lot of work as an actor where I've done plays that are like playing 21 different people in a show. And I've directed that and I've coached that kind of stuff a lot. So I work with people a lot who have to do a lot of different accents back to back. And it is about creating these big distinctions that involve a physical shift, that includes a mental shift, and like a whole way of looking at the world. That you've got to embody it right there and switch back and forth in that way. That's the only way to do it, is to create it as more of a complete thing, and not just look at it as here, now let me slip into that and it's a little bit like this. It's like, no, you got to create a whole character around that to make it actually work.
So 4 weeks of this, 4 weeks of intense training, lovely support, one-on-one action coaching, feedback. Okay, that's great. Let's try this.
Well, in the
With
coaching, one of my favorite things about it is doing the coaching.
Yeah,
And part of why I love it is getting to coach in a group like that, instead of coaching in a single individual, because a lot of times what happens is what comes up from working with this person on it and the different language. I keep trying to bring up different language for explaining the same idea, even because what makes sense for this person doesn't necessarily make sense for that person. And so having a lot of different interpretations of how to explain an idea, and having it, one of the things that I ask students more and more as the weeks go on with it is I go, what did you just do there? Give me your description of what you just did. So that they start to create their language for going, well, it was more, and I don't care if they say it was more purple, like, awesome. Purple took you in the right direction. So this is where we want to go. What if we spread that peanut butter over the whole piece of bread and bring that over? You found it in this little phrase. Now let's spread that into this other phrase.
that's exactly what I was going to ask you. I don't know if this is a crutch for me, or if it's common among actors, or if it's
Mhm.
brilliant and genius. I'm not sure. But there are phrases that I use to trigger my different, and probably have a dozen or more of them, depending upon what part of the country or world I'm trying to get into. When I talk about my Cleveland North Coast accent, I'm always parking my car in the driveway because it lets me do those harsh A's and the phrasing that one would happen if one just got a copy of the Plain Dealer. You know, I that triggers me right
Yeah.
into where I need to be. Is that common?
Oh yeah, absolutely. An anchor like that, an anchor phrase or a couple of words, you know, I'm going down the ocean, that can make a massive difference for somebody being able to take it on. And what they're finding when they do a phrase like that, or a pair of words or whatever it is, they start to get into that physical posture of it that's potentially is their whole body, but there's also a physical posture inside the mouth. This is that placement concept. And that physical posture inside of the mouth shifts almost all of the sounds to the right place. And then the number of sounds that you have to actually have to pay attention to, you know, and work on those becomes way fewer, because you got the placement for it, and that shifts most of them. And that's why the placement and the intonation are so massive for the work of an actor. And that anchoring, I like to use the term anchoring. I love that kind of a touchstone thing that you talked about, this trigger for you, as you called it, that's absolutely a great technique. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. And some of them are very, very short, and they drop me right into it. For example, Maryland, Natty Bow, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, Inner Harbor there, you know, or just hun, just saying hun, you know. So these are the things that you're going to learn in the accents class. When this class came along, and it's been taught for a while now, when it came along, it filled a hole, a void that it was just so comfortable. It was so lovely and easy. You know, if you think that accents and dialects are hard because you've told yourself you can't do it, you don't have an ear for it, you don't have the facility for it, if you've told yourself that and you've believed that, I'm going to ask you to take that belief, set it aside as a limiting belief that isn't serving you, and replace it with an enabling belief that you can do this, and you can approach this from many different ways. And Jim Johnson is the guy that will help you decide which of those many ways, and it may be more than one, will get you where you need to go in the accents class. If you go to voheroes.com/accents, you'll be taken to the page where you can sign up. Registration is open now. You can save $300 if you do it quickly before tomorrow night, Tuesday night at 9 p.m. as we do this show live on the interwebs, on the social networks, on the simulcast. Jim is your coach. Dan is involved as well. Dan sort of manages things, bring things along, but Jim is just an amazing talent and brings a joy for this sort of work that is infectious and is supportive and is lovely. And you get to take advantage of all that Jim has been through his entire life in terms of working with accents and dialects, and his acting training, because he knows how to talk to you as an actor, whether you're an on-camera actor, a voice actor, a stage actor, a combination of those things, as most of us are. Jim, I want to thank you so much for spending the time with me today. I know you have to go get some sleep, because this is going to be a long month for you. And here's hoping that people head over to the link on the screen and take advantage of it. The link, by the way, is also in the description of this video session. Wherever you're watching it, you'll find the clickable link there. Jim, thank you so much for being my guest today.
Thank you, David. It's always lovely to see you and get to talk about this kind of stuff. I'm a geek for it, so I love getting to chat about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Talk to you soon.